like to thank Jason Winn for lecturing today at this inaugural legal lunch. Thank you, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Thanks for everyone joining. Hopefully the volume for you is okay. If it's not, please let us know now. If you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat box. Hopefully everyone at this point is familiar with Zoom in the chat box. I'm going to do a share screen here in a minute. So you'll be able to see my screen and the slide presentation for you. It's a update of Florida laws and rules from the 2022 session. And then at the very end, we'll talk about looking forward to the 2023 session. The political climate right now in Florida, everyone is up for re-election at the House and the Senate, for the Florida House and the Florida Senate. So it's a busy political season. There are lots of races. Every race for the House and the Senate is up. We are experiencing a very busy time with lots of campaign events and fundraising. So one little plug for the Florida Podiatric Medical Association's political committee. I am certain they are accepting donations today, tomorrow, and into the next calendar year. Those donations are used by the FPMA PAC to support candidates, and those candidates that we support have a health background or support the healthcare professionals as yourself, pediatric physicians in Florida. So always feel free to contribute to the PAC. And if you have questions about that, please give the FPMA office a call. All right, so I'm going to hit share screen and hopefully this will work. We shall see. Share. All right. So if you have questions after the presentation, feel free to email me at jwin@jwinlaw. You can call my office at 222-7199, area code 850, or on my cell phone, the second number listed there. The best way to reach me is through my cell phone or email. You can text, you can call, you can email. Cell phone's the best. If you're unable to get a hold of me, please feel free to call the FPMA office in Tallahassee, leave a message, and they will get in touch with me and give me your information. I'll return your call. If you have questions about today's presentation during the presentation, again, please feel free to put those in the chat box, and the chat box will be monitored throughout the presentation, and we'll read any of those questions. All right, let's see how we get to the next slide. All right, disclaimer. I am an attorney. However, I am not your attorney. You should consult your own attorney, risk management office, or your malpractice carrier if you have specific questions prior to conducting any examinations or procedures. This is purely an educational webinar. I am not acting as your attorney. There is no valid defense tomorrow to say, yes, but Mr. Winn told me I could do it yesterday. With that in mind, if you do have questions that come up, I can certainly point you in the right direction. If you need an attorney or to reach out to your malpractice carrier, sometimes I get calls from individuals in other professions looking to hire me to represent them. And the first question I ask them is, have you called your insurance carrier? Because oftentimes they will provide you an attorney to represent you. If it's outside of your insurance carrier's plan, then certainly you would go out and hire your own attorney. All right. Educational objectives: locating the applicable statutes and rules impacting podiatric physicians through the online resources. Examining the applicable state laws and rules for licensed podiatric physicians. Assess the new laws passed during the 2022 legislative session, and then review recent administrative rules activity and its impact on podiatric medicine. So the first objective, learning about the Florida laws and rules, locating them, accessing them. Here on this slide, you can see at the bottom the website that this screenshot comes from. It's called Online Sunshine. If you Google Florida statutes, if you Google, and taking one step back from there, everyone hopefully knows what Google is. It's one of the best places to start for any of your searches online. You'll go to Google, you can type in Florida statutes, you can type in Online Sunshine, it'll get you to this home screen. From this screen, you can access directly to the Florida Senate. You can also go to the Florida House of Representatives. You can learn about all of the statutes, as you see here, where this red arrow is, the statutes, constitution, and laws of Florida. You can access all of those there. And you can specifically search, for instance, if a bill was passed this year, goes into effect July 1st of 2022, unless otherwise enacted within the language of the statute. You can search for a specific year to perform your search. When the statutes are amended, if you're looking at the latest version of the statutes in 2022, it will have all of the current language. But you may want to look and see when previously the statute was written in with different language, less language, or additional language. And in those cases, you could just go up here to the search statutes. If you know the change occurred somewhere in 2010, then you could search the statutes for the 2009, 2010, 2011, look at the same statute and see where the new language came in or where language was removed. So to access just the Florida Board of Podiatric Medicine, you can go again to Google, type in Florida Board of Podiatric Medicine, and it'll take you to their home screen, which is Florida's podiatricmedicine.gov. When you go there, you can access their meeting dates, you can access the actual statutes again, or the rules as promulgated by the Board of Podiatric Medicine. You'll see on their home screen, which is here, this is their home screen, but I've gone into what are called resources. Up across the top here, you have this banner, home button, licensing, renewals, resources, meetings, and then the board. Under the resources link, you can access down here the Florida statutes, again, to look at the laws, and the administrative codes to look at all of the rules as promulgated by the Board of Podiatric Medicine. But you can also access through this link here called declaratory statements. You can access all of the declaratory statements for all professions, including podiatric medicine, to see whether or not, if you have a question about the Practice Act or whether or not you can perform a certain procedure, for instance, within the hyperbaric chambers, you can go into the declaratory statements, read any previous declaratory statements, and read the outcome or the decision by the Board of Podiatric Medicine. Under the statute, or excuse me, under the Administrative Procedures Act in Chapter 120, you can, as a licensee, ask at any time under Chapter 125 for a declaratory statement. You simply are asking the Board of Podiatric Medicine, hey, the statutes and the rules say A and B. Does that allow me to perform surgeries under C? Does that allow me to perform treatment through hyperbaric chambers? And then you would ask that question to the board. It would be noticed for a public meeting, and then a decision by the board would be rendered after a public meeting, and then that decision applies to that app or that questioner or licensee only. It does not apply to all licensees. A declaratory statement response is valid only for the person that asked the question. So because of that, once there are multiple declaratory statements requested by various individuals, the board will then undergo rulemaking to modify, alter, or edit the rules so that it is clear as to what the podiatric physician can do, and then that would apply to all licensees. So, and we'll come back to those, the board website for some other information as well. This past legislative session occurred January 11th through March 11th. And every other year it swaps from January to March. For this year, next year, it'll be March to May. This is because of the legislature wanting the session to end in March, leading up to an election in November. Next year, after the 2023 session, there won't be an election in 23. So that session will end in May or carry from March through the end of April. This past legislative session, there were 3,735 total bills filed. The FPMA team tracked probably around 100 of those related to healthcare, relating to licensing, and MQA, the medical quality assurance, the Department of Health, the Board of Podiatric Medicine, as well as any specific statutes or bills that were being proposed that directly impacted podiatric physicians. Some of the hot topics from this past session: reapportionment, as we know, that passed, and then they came back for a special session. The other hot topics: consumer data privacy, individual freedom, reducing fetal and infant mortality, continued revamps of education policy, higher ed, critical race theory, law enforcement officers, benefits, recruitment and training, local government preemption, as we saw a big deal with in the Disney arena, and then homestead property tax exemption. As you know, the Florida legislature is obligated to perform one task while they are in session. Those during the 60-day session, they are obligated to pass one bill, and that is the state budget. So this past year, the Florida state budget, and whoever is off of mute, if you could hit mute, that would be great. We have some background coming in, and I can't see everyone. Mute you, or I do it myself.
Yes.
Right, so
Yeah.
sorry. Yep, maybe it was that one. Good, found them. All right, so 2022 to 2023 Florida state budget, the total was $112 billion, and included education for 29 million, health and human services for close to 50, criminal justice and corrections over 6, and then natural resources, environment, transportation, close to 20 billion, the general government 7.5, judicial branch 700 million. Governor DeSantis approved the budget but vetoed $3.1 billion on June 2nd of 2022. This was the biggest budget ever for the state of Florida, and it was there was a surplus of money that allowed for the legislature and the governor to pass many benefits for law enforcement officers and frontline workers and some other monies for criminal justice and corrections outside of what the federal government was doing as well. So the legislative issues that we tracked this year and that passed, one of the bigger ones, telehealth. Telehealth was approved, was a bill run by Senator DIAZ. He is a Republican. Senator DIAZ is now no longer a senator and has joined the administration of Governor Ron DeSantis in the Department of Education. The bill was passed, approved by the governor and effective on July 1 of 2022. It allows a telehealth provider to issue a renewal prescription for a controlled substance listed in schedules 3, 4, and 5. It still must be in accordance with other state and federal laws, and the current law remains for Schedule 2 controlled substances, including exemption for the treatment of psychiatric disorder. So you may not use telehealth to prescribe a controlled substance 2 unless it's for a psychiatric disorder. That did not change. Both current law and the bill authorize telehealth providers to prescribe controlled substances listed in a Schedule 2 only when treating for a psychiatric disorder, inpatient care at a hospital, a patient receiving hospice services, or a resident of a nursing home facility. So the Schedule 2s are out. Schedules 3, 4, and 5 can be prescribed for a patient, and we'll go back one slide, for a renewal prescription for a controlled 3, 4, or 5. Another big topic for the legislature and for the healthcare family was the COVID-19 liability protections, Senate Bill 7014, and that was sponsored by the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's effective July 1 of 2022. It's the, it was approved by the governor.
I'm getting nervous for you.
Chapter 2022, Section 768.381 Florida statute extends the COVID-19 liability protection to June 1st of 2023. During next year's or 2023 legislative session, they will be able to take up this bill or this issue and see whether or not they need to extend again the COVID-19 liability protection for healthcare workers from June 1st, 2023 forward. So this was a issue that popped up because the expiration of the previous COVID-19 liability protection ended during the legislative session in March. I'm sorry, was in March. And if they only extended this last year or this past session till the end of next session, it would be difficult. That's why they extended it through June 1st of 2023 to give them time during next year's legislative session to bring this issue up and see if they need to extend it again. The changes to the parental consent laws in 2021, there was a bill in 2021 that said, except as otherwise provided, a healthcare practitioner could not treat a minor without first providing or receiving parental consent to treat that minor child. This was an issue that was discussed in the terms of you're driving your car, you see a young child on a bicycle get hit by another vehicle, can you stop and render aid? And based upon the passage of the bill in 2021, you were not able to provide aid without also facing criminal liability. You would have been exempt from civil liability, but criminal liability was still there. So during the 2022 legislative session, a bill sponsored by Representative Dr. Masulo from the Central Florida area, Beverly Hills, offered a bill, and it passed, that allows a physician to provide emergency medical care or treatment to a minor without parental consent if delay in initiation or provision of emergency medical care or treatment would endanger the health or physical well-being of the minor. This bill and its passage created a new statute under 743.064. We did not go into the same statute that the Parental Bill of Rights was because of the political environment with the Parental Bill of Rights, and not to mess with that and run into any issues. This bill was run under 743 statute so that there weren't any confusion that we were trying to affect parental consent or parental rights. So the absence of parental consent notwithstanding, a licensed physician under 064 may render care or aid in the pre-hospital setting. Another big issue, patient access issues under, it was House Bill 459, requires insurers to put step therapy and fail first procedures on its website so that the patients are able to access that. And it requires insurers to authorize or deny a protocol exemption in a reasonable amount of time. Another bill was the workers' compensation benefits for post-traumatic stress disorder by Representative Fischer. And it revised and extended the deadline for filing the notice of injury to 90 days after qualifying event or a diagnosis, whichever is later. It also extended the deadline for a first responder to file a claim to 52 weeks after the qualifying event or diagnosis.
I have to go back and look.
And if anyone could mute, that would be great. So some of the legislation that failed out of those 3,700 bills, not all of them passed. The ones that failed that we worked hard on, the scope of practice issue or the scope of practice legislation, psychology prescribing failed, APRN or the autonomous practice failed, collaborative practice in healthcare failed, and then there was a panel discussion only on optometry and ophthalmology, which there was no expansion or change of their scope of practice for those. Others that failed, the medical malpractice wrongful death exemption, allowing the parents of an adult child who has no surviving spouse or children to recover from mental pain and suffering in a medical malpractice wrongful death action. That failed. Free speech of healthcare providers. This was a bill that the governor was in support of. It was a bill that was run in both the House and the Senate. It went a long way, but like much of the other legislation that was presented during this session, it failed. Even though the governor was in large support of the bills, the House and Senate were not able to come to an agreement on the language. The House passed one version, the Senate passed another. As you know, when that happens, there needs to be a negotiation. The House needs to either accept the Senate's version or the Senate needs to accept the House version during the session, and that did not happen this year. So the free speech of healthcare practitioners failed. That will be readdressed, I'm sure, in the 2023 session. This is will be another topic, I'm sure, that will come back next year. The medical conscience bill was one that was run, and it was really about one physician and some comments that they had made. That bill, although there was proposals in both the House and the Senate by two Republicans, that bill also failed. You can see a list of all of the bills on the online Sunshine, and we'll go through and show you some of those here in a moment. The laws and rules, the mental health questions on DOH licensure application was an issue that has been kicked around for some time. Back in September of 2017, the FMA began the process by petitioning the Board of Medicine to change the mental health questions on the applications for allopathic physicians. At that time, the DOH proposed making the changes across the board. Ultimately, those the language as proposed then did not pass, but there was an agreement on the questions that did pass, and that is now incorporated into the podiatric medical license application. So if you're applying for a license in Florida as a podiatric physician, they ask the following two questions. Instead of what used to be a very lengthy questionnaire about your mental health, they ask these two questions simply. During the last 2 years, have you been treated for or had a recurrence of a diagnosed physical or mental disorder that impaired or impairs your ability to practice? Yes or no? Second question, during the last 5 years, have you been treated for or had a recurrence of a diagnosed substance related alcohol or drug disorder that impaired your or impairs your ability to practice? There was much discussion, testimony, and presentations on whether or not the previous questions were allowing for or guaranteeing that somebody that was answering the question was doing so with their understanding and their ability to protect their own information, and whether or not it was relevant. If there was a mental health disorder some 10 or 15 or 20 years prior to the applicant applying in Florida, was it really relevant? The previous application required you to disclose that. The current application does not. You can find that application on the website, and those are the questions that they ask. Those two questions are now asked of all licensed healthcare providers in the state of Florida. Under your license and under your, what I would say, the petitions for variance or waivers of the rule, there's been much discussion during COVID about attending continuing education for licensed pediatric physicians. So one of the requirements was for you to attend within 24 months a meeting of the Board of Podiatric Medicine. That requirement was for you to attend in person the Board of Podiatric Medicine that met around the state 4 times a year. We'll go through those meetings here in a minute. But during COVID and since COVID, they have not been meeting regularly in person. And because of that, many new licensees were unable to complete this requirement of their license to attend a Board of Podiatric Medicine meeting within 24 months of their licensure. So because of many questions to the board through petitions for variance or waiver of this rule, the board promulgated and modified their rule to state within 24 months of initial licensure, practitioners are required to obtain 5 hours of continuing education in the in the area of risk management, which may be obtained by attending 1 full day of a meeting of the Board of Podiatric Medicine at which disciplinary hearings are conducted. They are then exempt from any other continuing education requirements for his or her first renewal, except for a 1-hour case on human trafficking and the hours mandated for prevention of medical errors and HIV. Now, it says in the podiatric physicians initially licensed must receive 5 hours, which may be obtained through, it did not, that slide did not make it in there, and I apologize. So you now may take the 5 hours of risk management individually, and we'll pop up the rule here in a moment and give you that information. The other requirement is for you to take the continuing education for human trafficking that you must take as part of your 40 hours. Moving forward into the next key legislative dates, the governor had and is still signing bills. He signed the budget a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. The new fiscal year begins July 1st of 2022. The primary elections are going to be held August 23rd. Then we have the general election in November. Remember, for PAC contributions, you can give up to the limit up in the primary. And then again, you can give up to the limit in the general election. The interim committee meetings will begin December 2022 through February of 2023. And then next year's legislative session begins March 7th and will end on May 5th of 2023. That is what I have. The next slide is asking for questions. I'm going to, let's see, hop out of this presentation. It looks like the question that I had, can you comment on the change that a physician assistant have become physician associates and how this affects the DIAZ issue? Thank you. No idea what that question means. Sorry, Dr. Robotsky. No idea what you mean by have become physician associates. Physicians assistants are licensed as physician assistants, and that's what they are. Any other questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat box. I'm going to pull up the Board of Podiatric Medicine. This is the Board of Podiatric Medicine website. Here is the homepage. Whoever is in their car, if you could hit mute, that would be great, or I'll find you first. Here is the home page for the Board of Podiatric Medicine. As I talked about earlier, the resources page will give you a link to the forms, requests, the PDF of all of the applications, and then also here, the Florida statutes and administrative codes. You can click on any of these to bring up your statutes or the administrative codes. Here is your Podiatric Medicine Practice Act, takes you right to the online Sunshine page, and you can see here all of the statutes that apply to you. This one is the most important one because this is the bill that we promulgated and were able to pass during last year, 2021's legislative session, that states that podiatric physicians now have the ability to supervise a medical assistant. A podiatric physician who is supervising a medical assistant shall be governed by statute 458.3485. As everyone on this call knows, podiatric physicians are unable to supervise a physician assistant, unable to supervise a advanced practice registered nurse, but are able now, thanks to the FPMA and lobbyist Chris Hansen, we were able to pass this legislation that now gives podiatric physicians in Florida the ability to supervise medical assistants. You're governed by 458.3485. 458.3485 is the Allopathic Medicine Practice Act. If you click that highlighted button there or text, takes you right to the statute. And this is all of the things that a medical assistant can do. They're all listed here. All of these same apply to you as a pediatric physician supervising them. This is your guide if you're hiring a medical assistant. All right, another, it looks like, is the collaborative law the one that affects the pharmacist and physician treatment agreement? I'm not sure. If you could re-ask that question, I'm not sure I followed that question. Okay, so back to the home page. One of the things that you can do, what we were talking about earlier, the declaratory statements, to see if anyone's asked the question before you. So you go to you click on that button, you go to the declaratory statements, you go to podiatric medicine, and then you'll see here all of the questions that have ever been asked. It's all public record, and you can ask the question and then receive the response. So on this one, there was a question back in 2017 by Dr. Ortiz. And the question, there was a petition, a question as to whether or not the practice of hyperbaric oxygen for wound care of the foot, ankle, and legs is within the practice of podiatric medicine. The board answered in the affirmative, as you can see here. So that physician that asked the question is now able to do it. If others wanted to do it, just because there's this declaratory statement here does not provide you a defense. Only if the board came back and modified the rules to include that would it be a viable defense for you, or an absolute defense for you. But because the board made this determination that it was within your scope of practice, that it would be very unlikely that you would face disciplinary action for performing that. So those are the declaratory statements. You can see some other ones. If we go back to the home page for the board, you can see across the top in this banner, they have a link for their meetings. The next meeting of the board is this Friday. It's a go-to meeting link. You can pop in there, watch the meeting that begins at 9 a.m. At each and every one of those meetings, there is a representative from the FPMA there to take notes and answer any questions that may be asked, and to get information so that we can relay it and bring it back to our members as a member benefit. One of the questions, or one of the issues that the board has been looking at recently is on the rules for CME, and there is other information that occurs during the meetings that they will respond on or on behalf of. So those are the meetings. You can see any of the upcoming meetings. It'll have those listed here, but you can go to the past meetings and see, for instance, this meeting back in February, there was a meeting here on January 27th that occurred at the or during the FPMA convention, and then you can click on the minutes and read all about what happened during the meeting, what issues they took up, and how it was handled. What I was going to show you on this one was the petition for variance or waiver of the rule for the continuing education requirement of attending the in-person meeting of the board within the first 24 months of licensure. So the board took up the issue and then made some suggestions on how they would allow for the attendance and completion of those risk management hours in lieu of attending the one-day Board of Podiatric Medicine meeting. So they took it up, it passed unanimously to allow for them to receive those 5 hours through another mechanism, so that they did not have to attend the Board of Podiatric Medicine meeting. So let's go look real quickly at your resources again at the homepage, and we'll go to the administrative code. We'll go down here to your rules as promulgated, and we'll go to continuing education. And we can look there. We click on the box here, and it opens up the new Word document. And these are the current rules for continuing education for all licensed pediatric physicians. So if we look here, let me make this a little bigger for you. Too big. All right. Sorry, we're going to go here. So the current biennium for the 2020 to 2022 biennial renewal period, there is no cap on the number of credit hours that a licensed pediatric physician may receive for continuing education hours obtained through online home study continuing education courses. So you can take all hours through online resources. So we'll go back to this screen, and you can see these are all of the rules as promulgated by the board for pediatric physicians. The licensing or renewals here, this tab will take you to a renewal license for you. You pick the type of license and then the requirements, and it'll give you all of the information for renewing that license. If it's an initial application, then you'll go to the licensing page and choose the type of license you want. If at any time you are wanting to know about any other licensees, or if you're looking to hire someone into your practice and you want to look at their practitioner profile, you can do so by looking down here at this banner, and you can go to lookup. It'll take you to the MQA, Medical Quality Assurance page. You can then do a license verification or a practitioner profile search. And you can search by any of the boards of chiropractor, medicine, osteopathic medicine, podiatry, and nursing. And then you simply type in the last name here, and you see what type of license they have and whether or not there's been any disciplinary action against their license. You type in their last name right there. If I typed in my name, it's going to come up with no record because I'm not a licensed pediatric physician. So you can look up by board or council or by profession, and you can search anyone's practitioner profile. The license verification is for all Department of Health licenses, all boards under the medical quality assurance, but not all of them are required to have a practitioner profile. So for the Board of Massage Therapy, let's just pick this, and you can see if you wanted to know information about Aaron Bruce Smith, well, they got a null and void license. Here's one, Aletha Wyona Smith. You can click on that license, and it'll tell you that they have a clear and active license. It'll also tell you whether or not there's any discipline on file, and if there's ever been a public complaint filed against that practitioner. So you can search any and all people that have a license or have had a license through the Department of Health. For this one, we'll go and see, you know, I was just going to try to find one that has a health history, I mean, a complaint filed against them. just so you can see everything about them. Everything about the complaint. This may take forever. I should have tried this prior. Hold on. Now, all right. Well, and I don't want to. Well, we can do this. Look up by. We'll go to the Board of Medicine and the active. Trying to find one that has obligations or had proceedings or actions filed against them. So that is the way to do the search on all individual practitioners licensed in the state of Florida. And that, again, can be accessed right from the homepage of the Board of Podiatric Medicine. All right, so let's see. The question now says, the law that failed was that the pharmacist allopathic collaborative treatment agreements where the pharmacist may treat under protocols to include, as outlined by the, well, they do have collaborative treatments between physicians and pharmacists that are currently out there. I'm not certain if it's specific to your question and Timmy Pettis. I'm not sure what that is, but there are current statutes that allow for the collaborative agreement between the two. So, for instance, if you want to see that, we'll go to the floridahealth.gov page, the licensing and regulation. You can click on any of these, and we'll let's see. Let's go to a pharmacist, because that's where your question originates. And let's see. Here, new legislation impacting the profession. You can click on them. The administration of vaccines, acute and post-acute hospital care at home, and then drugs related to overdose prevention. Other bill, they don't talk about the bills that didn't pass, but they have protocols between physicians and pharmacists that are allowed to perform certain administrations of vaccinations. And then you have, which here, the pharmacist collaborative practice certification, and these are the requirements as established in conjunction with the Board of Medicine, Board of Osteopathic Medicine, and the Board of Pharmacy when they did joint rulemaking to come up with the requirements under the Florida statutes for any pharmacist that wanted to enter into a collaborative practice agreement with an MD or a DO. So, all right, that's it. I'm gonna stop the share, come back to the page. If there's any other questions, comments, concerns that anyone has, raise your hand or throw them in the chat box. Otherwise, we will listen for any questions or see any questions coming in the future by email. Call the FPMA office, contribute money to the PC so that we are able to further your ability to supervise medical assistants. Hopefully, maybe one day other healthcare practitioners you would be able to supervise or perform healthcare services alongside with. That's only available for those of us that fight hard enough at the legislature to get a bill passed. Thanks to the FPMA and their efforts through Chris Hansen to pass that legislation, you are now able to supervise medical assistants with the help of all PAC contributors. You made that happen, so make sure you support the PAC, contribute money, and you can protect your right to practice as a podiatric pediatric physician in the state of Florida. The question is, please confirm if we are allowed to take CME all online and not need to be in person. They are, under the rule, allowed to all be online during this current biennium. And I would say that's all the questions I see. Anyone raise a hand? Last call for questions. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your consideration. If you have questions, please feel free to shoot them over to me. Thanks to the FPMA for hosting, and I will end the meeting now unless there's any objection.